welcome to the Poetry of J.P., a podcast where we explore the intricate world of poetry, one line at a time. I am your host, J.P., and over the next few episodes, we will delve deep into the art and craft of poetry, uncovering the secrets that make a poem resonate with readers and listeners alike. But before we dive into our series, let me share with you a story, one that's at the very heart of why this podcast exists. How many times has it felt like life was just completely flipped around? Like with Zeno, an old merchant who lost everything in a shipwreck. He didn't take it lying down, but became a philosopher and would later go on to become one of the founders of Stoicism. His loss came to be a turning point in thinking, a way of thought that has touched millions of lives since. I had a shipwreck too, and it set me on a dive deep into something I have always loved, but never fully engaged with, poetry. Out of that journey of rediscovery and reflection comes this podcast, and I'm so excited to share it with you. This podcast began as a personal project, an exploration to deepen my understanding of something I love. Over time, I realized that the knowledge I've gathered would be valuable to others too. Originally, I intended to write a book, but I decided that a podcast would be a more dynamic way to share these insights. In this series, we'll dive into most aspects of poetry, drawing from the 60 or so scripts I've written. I'll be releasing new episodes weekly, each one offering a wealth of knowledge on the art of poetry. In this series, we'll explore the poetic line, the building block of poetry, the thread that holds the tapestry of verse together. We'll examine how contemporary poets craft their lines, breaking them, bending them, and shaping them to convey meaning, evoke emotion, and create rhythm. But before we get into the specifics of our episode, it's important to acknowledge the state of poetry today. Poetry has never seen more people writing it, thanks to the expansive reach of the internet. Yet, paradoxically, the readership of poetry has reached an all-time low. This decline isn't just a matter of taste. It's a reflection of the challenges poetry faces in connecting with modern audiences. We'll address these challenges in this series, but we'll also focus on the possibilities. Poetry is a living, breathing art form, and the poetic line is where it all begins. Now let me give you a glimpse into what you can expect in the upcoming episodes. Episode 1. The evolution of the poetic line. We'll start with a look at how the poetic line has evolved over time, from the strict metrical verses of the past to the free-flowing lines that characterize contemporary poetry. Episode 2. The mechanics of the poetic line. In this episode, we'll break down the mechanics of the poetic line. What makes one line sing while another one falls flat. We'll explore how poets use line length, rhythm, and placement to shape the reader's experience. Episode 3. Emotional resonance through line structure. Here we'll dive into how the structure of a poetic line can evoke powerful emotions and set the tone of a poem. We'll look at how poets create mood with just a few words. Episode 4. Rhyme, Rhythm, and the Modern Poetic Line. Even in free verse, rhythm and rhyme are alive and well. In this episode, we'll explore how these elements continue to influence the modern poetic line. Episode 5. Tension and Balance in the Poetic Line. Tension and balance are crucial tools in a poet's toolkit. We'll examine how poets use these techniques to create contrast, enhance meaning, and make their work more impactful. Episode 6. Synthesizing Elements. The line as the heart of poetry. In our final episode, we'll bring everything together exploring how the poetic line is the heart of poetry. We'll see how all the elements we've discussed work in harmony to create something truly special. So here we are at the beginning of our journey. Whether you're a poet, a reader, or simply someone curious about the art of poetry, this podcast is for you. Together we'll explore the power of the poetic line, understanding how it shapes the world of verse and how it can be used to craft poetry that resonates deeply with its audience. I hope this series will give you new insights into the craft of poetry and inspire you to think differently about the lines you read and write. After all, the poetic line is where it all begins and where it never truly ends. Thank you for joining me on this introduction to the Poetry of J.P. If you're ready to dive into the world of poetry, subscribe now so you don't miss an episode. And if you know someone who might enjoy this journey, please share this podcast with them. Let's embark on this exploration together. Until next time, keep reading, keep writing, and keep exploring the power of the poetic line. A poet is, before anything else, a person who is passionately in love with language. W.H. Auden.